On September 11, 1973, the world stopped for millions of people in South America. In Chile, a country that had been considered a model of democratic development just yesterday, the military seized power. Early in the morning, they attacked La Moneda, the presidential palace in the capital. Inside was President Salvador Allende, the world's first democratically elected socialist. He did not surrender. He spoke to his people on the radio while shells exploded around him. And when it became clear that there was no way out, he died in the palace with a weapon in his hands. On the same day, mass arrests, killings, and repression began. Thousands of Chileans disappeared without a trace. Among the first victims was Victor Jara, a musician whose fingers were broken so that he could no longer play. Pablo Neruda, a poet whose work was a symbol of humanism, also died shortly thereafter. His death still raises questions. The coup was not a spontaneous outburst of anger, but a carefully planned operation, supported and coordinated from across the ocean. Documents that have now been declassified prove that the CIA, the White House, Richard Nixon, and Henry Kissinger were involved in the coup. They were not afraid of Allende's ideas. They were afraid of the very possibility that a poor country could manage its own resources without the involvement of transnational corporations. It was against this backdrop that Oswaldo Guayasamin created one of his most powerful and painful works, Tears of Blood. In this painting, a figure stares directly at us. Her gaze is frozen in fear. Her mouth is covered by her hands. And from under her fingers flow streams of red tears. This is not just sadness. It is shock and helplessness. It is the moment when the entire continent realized, your voice, your will, your democracy are worth exactly as much as the great powers allow them to be. Guayasamin does not depict a specific person. It is a collective image of Latin America, a continent that cries, loses hope, covers its face because it does not want to see the truth that cannot be changed. The painting is silent, but its silence is deafening. Tears of Blood is not art about death. It is art about the loss of the idea that people can decide their own destiny. But why did all this happen? For the United States, Chile in the 1970s was not a country, it was an economic project. Allende began to nationalize key industries, copper, energy, banks. He wanted profits to remain in the country and go toward education, healthcare, and housing. But this was contrary to the interests of large corporations. And so the US made a decision. This model had to be destroyed demonstratively, brutally, publicly. The CIA organized funding for the opposition press, strikes, and economic sabotage. And when that proved insufficient, they put General Augusto Pinochet at the head of the country, who turned Chile into a laboratory of fear. The population reacted instantly. The streets, which yesterday were filled with posters and hope, were now filled with silence and bodies. Mothers lost their children. Children lost their voices. But Guayasamin's art did not allow this silence to prevail. In his paintings from those years, we see women crying without tears, faces that have lost their features, hands that still remember the warmth of those who are no longer there. It is not just anger. It is a deep, epic grief that does not seek sympathy but says, I remember everything. We remember everything.